Have you ever, like, just been sitting around thinking and then you stumble on one of those what-if questions?
Yeah.
Like, what if Pope Francis had children?
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's a weird question, right?
Yeah,
But it's kind of funny to think about.
it is.
But you know what? It actually gets at a much deeper philosophical puzzle.
It really does. That seemingly simple what if
Yeah.
throws us head first
Huh.
into a really big debate that's been going on in philosophy for centuries.
Right. The possibilism versus actualism debate.
Exactly.
And in this deep dive, we're going to tackle that debate head on.
We are.
We're going to be using some pretty heavy-duty philosophical tools and concepts.
Right.
And our main guide is going to be this Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy entry on this very debate.
Yeah, a fantastic resource.
So it's kind of like we're giving you a backstage pass to how philosophers think through these really mind-bending questions.
I like that, a backstage pass.
So what's the big deal here?
Well, at the heart of it, it's a disagreement about what truly exists. Not just the stuff we see and touch, but like everything in the broadest possible sense.
Okay, so like the whole enchilada of reality.
Yeah, the whole enchilada. And, philosophers have a fancy word for this. They call it ontology, the study of being.
Ontology, right?
Ontology.
So it's not just about like playing word games or logic puzzles.
Right.
It's about the very architecture of reality as philosophers see it.
Exactly. And the central tension is this. You have the possibilists who say, hey, there are these things that are merely possible,
Okay.
like Bergoglio's hypothetical kids.
Right, if he had chosen a different path.
And then you have the actualists who are like, no way, if it doesn't actually exist, it's not a thing.
So for them to be is to be actual.
Exactly. End of story.
Okay, so you, our amazing listener, brought this topic to us because clearly you're someone who enjoys a good philosophical brain twister.
Obviously a curious mind.
So how do philosophers even start to get a grip on these things that could be but aren't?
Well, that's what we're here to unpack for you.
Yeah, we're going to look at the main arguments and different perspectives.
Ins and outs.
And hopefully have some aha moments along the way.
Exactly.
Without getting too bogged down in the jargon.
That's the goal.
All right, so let's dive in.
Let's do it.
This whole possibilism versus actualism thing, it's fundamentally about ontology.
At its core, absolutely.
It's not primarily about language or logic.
Right.
It's about what kinds of things reality is ultimately made up of.
The building blocks of what is,
Right.
so to speak.
Exactly. And back to Pope Francis.
Our favorite example.
If possibilists are right about this, those potential children of his,
Yeah.
they're not just some fleeting thought or a convenient way of speaking.
Right. They're not just hypotheticals.
They are, in some sense, part of the totality of what there is,
A part of the whole.
even though they don't, walk and talk and live and breathe like you and I do.
Exactly. They exist in a different way.
It's a bold claim.
It is a very bold claim.
So a merely possible child,
Yeah.
not actually real, not anyone's kid in the real world,
Right.
wouldn't have a physical body as we know it.
Not in the same way.
It's like we're talking about shadows of unrealized potential.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of actualists see it.
It is.
It's this kind of unnecessary and maybe even nonsensical commitment to a realm of non-existent entities.
Yeah, like why bother with things that aren't really there?
Exactly.
But possibilists have a way of trying to make sense of this.
Right.
They talk about a bimodal conception of being.
Okay, bimodal meaning two modes.
Right, two ways of being.
Okay, so what are these two modes?
Well, they say there's a strong mode of actuality or existence,
Okay.
which is the familiar world we live in.
Right, this is us, the trees, the stars.
Exactly, the concrete stuff.
Okay, and what's the other mode?
The other mode is a bit more thin, a bit more rarefied.
Okay.
It's sometimes called subsistence.
Subsistence.
And this is where those merely possible things reside, the possibilia. So for possibilists, Bergoglio's potential children, they might subsist in this realm of possibility, even though they don't exist in our concrete reality.
Okay, so it's like two different levels of being.
Exactly.
One's more robust than the other.
One's more concrete, one's more like a potential.
And a key characteristic of these possibilia is that they're contingently non-actual.
Yes.
That's crucial. So they don't exist now, but they could have existed if things had gone differently.
Right, if different choices had been made.
Precisely. And this leads us to how philosophers formally define these positions.
It does.
So possibilism, often symbolized as pos with a subscript A exclamation point,
Right.
can be put like this. There are things that are not actual but could have been.
Yeah, nice succinct definition.
And if we use this symbol A with an exclamation point to mean is actual,
right.
then it looks like that there exists X such that X is not actual, and it's possible that X is actual.
Using the fancy symbol.
The fancy symbols, exactly.
So it's basically saying, look, There's at least one thing out there that's not in the actual box right now,
Right.
but it has the potential to be.
It could have been.
Exactly.
And actualism in its simplest form is just denying that statement.
It is saying, no, that's not true.
But actualists usually want to go further.
They do. They're not content with just saying there aren't any possibilia.
Right.
They often argue that there couldn't be any.
So it's a much stronger rejection.
Much strong. It's a fundamental denial of the possibility of possibilia.
Okay, so we've got these two modes of being.
Mm.
Seems pretty central to this debate.
It is a key distinction.
But where did this whole idea even come from?
Well, the source traces it way back,
Okay.
even alluding to Parmenides,
Parmenides.
the ancient Greek philosopher,
Yeah.
who warned against thinking that things that are not are.
Right, so this fundamental problem of how can we even talk about things that don't exist?
Yeah, it seems paradoxical.
It does. If something's not real, how can we have a real conversation about it?
It's like trying to grab smoke.
Exactly. And then the source mentions Seneca and the Stoics, who talked about incorporeals having a derivative kind of reality.
Right, so already we see hints of this idea of different levels of being.
Okay, so different grades of reality.
Exactly.
But things really start to get more defined in the 19th century.
They do.
With Bolzano.
Bolzano, yes, a very influential figure.
He drew a distinction between things with actuality and those with mere possibility.
Right.
And he even included things like propositions and truths in that latter category.
Yes, even abstract things could fall under mere possibility for Bolzano.
So for him, even abstract ideas that aren't physical objects, they were in this realm of mere possibility.
You were along with, a potential future invention or something like that.
Right.
Exactly.
And then we get to Meinong.
Meinong. Oh, yes, the king of non-existent objects.
He was all about intentionality.
Yes, our ability to think about things that don't exist.
And he's famous for proposing this whole realm of non-existent objects.
He is
like unicorns and square circles.
all of things that couldn't possibly exist.
But he didn't stop there.
No, he didn't. He went even further.
He said that for pretty much any set of properties you can imagine, there's a non-existent object that has exactly those properties.
A very bold claim.
It is?
So, even the description, a possible child of Bergoglio would pick out one of these non-existent objects.
Right, even though there isn't actually such a child.
Exactly. For Meinong, it's an object of thought, even if it's not an object in reality.
And the source notes that Meinong himself didn't really talk about possible objects in that way.
Right. He was more focused on those impossible objects, like round squares.
Okay, so this whole realm of non-existent objects is getting pretty crowded.
It is. It's a very populated realm.
But what's interesting is that Meinong didn't give these intentional objects any kind of being.
Not even subsistence.
Right, so not full-blown existence, not some kind of lesser subsistence, just being something we can think about.
Yeah, just objects of thought for Meinong.
Okay, so that's pretty minimal.
It is very minimal in terms of their place in reality.
And then Bertrand Russell comes along.
Russell.
And he was initially influenced by Meinong.
He was.
But he disagreed with him on this point.
He did. He thought that these intentional objects, at least the non-contradictory ones, did have some form of being.
Okay, so he's giving them a bit more ontological weight.
He's saying they're not just nothing.
Right.
He's saying they reside in this subsistent realm.
Okay.
Along with things like numbers.
So not quite as real as a table.
Right. Not concrete.
But more real than just an idea in our heads.
Exactly. Somewhere in between.
Okay, so Russell's kind of putting these possible things in a halfway house of being.
He's giving them a place, but not quite full citizenship in the world of existence.
And then there's Quine.
W.V.O. Quine, another giant of 20th century philosophy.
And he famously said that a mere possible is to be unactualized.
Yes, a very memorable phrase.
To subsist rather than to exist.
Right.
And he used the example of Pegasus.
The winged horse.
Right. And he argued that when we say Pegasus doesn't exist, we're just saying it lacks this special property of actuality.
Right.
But its being, in some sense, is unquestioned.
It's still something, even if it's not actual.
So for Quine, Pegasus is something.
It is.
It just happens to not have the property of being real in our world.
Exactly, like a potential that never materialized.
Yeah.
A blueprint that was never built.
A really interesting way to think about it.
It is.
But then Quine himself actually changed his mind about certain things.
He did, famously.
When it came to abstract objects like numbers.
Yes, he had a change of heart.
He argued that even though they're not physical things, they exist just as much as we do.
a radical move.
It is.
So for Quine, the number 7 is just as real as the Eiffel Tower.
Whoa, okay.
Even though one is a concept and the other is a physical structure.
Right.
In terms of their existence, they're on the same level.
That's a big shift.
It is a huge shift, and it had a big impact on this whole possibilism, actualism debate.
Right, because if abstract objects are considered actual, then possibly these things that could have been concrete but aren't,
Yes.
they become the main inhabitants of the non-actual zone.
Right. The possibilists have to find a new home for their possibilia.
Exactly. And this allowed actualism to be formulated in a new, powerful way.
It did.
Act with a star a bang, which
Right.
says necessarily everything is actual.
Or in symbols, a box for all X is actual.
So it's saying that in every possible way, reality could have been only actual things exist.
That's the core of it.
And this also led to this idea called ersatz modal realism,
Right.
which is the idea that we can explain concepts like possibility and necessity by talking about things that actually exist,
Yeah.
specifically abstract things.
So instead of needing a whole universe of possible worlds populated by non-actual beings,
Right.
they try to explain it all using things that we all agree are real, like sets of propositions.
Okay, so it's like they're trying to ground possibility in actuality.
Exactly. They're trying to find a way to talk about what could be without having to commit to anything beyond what is.
So it's a kind of a minimalist ontology?
It is a very parsimonious approach.
Okay, so this Quinian reframing really changed the game.
It set the stage for the modern debate.
But not everyone's on board with this whole bimodal way of thinking about being.
Of course not. Philosophers love to disagree.
Right.
So what are some of the problems people have with this idea of dividing being into these different modes?
Well, there are philosophers like Linsky and Zalta and Timothy Williamson.
Williamson, yes. A major figure.
They've raised some big questions.
Yeah.
Williamson, for example, wonders about this robustness that supposedly separates actuality from mere possibility.
Right. What exactly makes being actual a stronger form of being?
Yeah, what does that even mean?
A very good question.
And he suggests that maybe the whole possibilism-actualism distinction isn't the best way to think about things. Maybe we should focus on the distinction between necessitism and contingentism.
Okay, so shifting the focus.
Yeah. Instead of asking what kind of being something has, we should ask how essential that being is.
Right. So is it necessary or contingent?
Exactly. And Linsky and Zalta, they take a slightly different approach.
They do.
They point out that even if we accept act star,
the idea that necessarily everything is actual.
Right.
There's nothing stopping someone from calling themselves a possibilist and simply claiming that Bergoglio's possible children are fully actual.
Okay.
Just not concrete.
So they're real, they just don't exist in the physical world.
Exactly. They're actual but non-physical.
So they're saying the whole debate might just come down to how we define actual.
In a way, yes, it's about what counts as being actual.
So everyone could be an actualist.
They
They just have different ideas about what it means to be actual.
Exactly. Different criteria for actuality.
And they argue that the real difference might not be about different modes of being, but about whether we think things can be real without being physical or spatiotemporal.
Right.
Which philosophers call concreteness.
Concreteness, a key concept.
And this leads to a whole new way of framing the debate.
It does?
In terms of concreteness,
Right.
symbolized by C with an exclamation point.
Okay.
So possibilism becomes pos with a subscript C exclamation point, which means there are things that are not concrete but could have been.
So there are things that could have been concrete but aren't.
Exactly. And in symbols, there exists X such that X is not concrete, and it's possible that X is concrete.
Okay, and how does actualism look in this framework?
Actualism becomes act with a subscript C exclamation point, which means there could not have been any things that are not concrete but could have been.
So it's denying the possibility of non-concrete possibilia.
Exactly. And in symbols, it's not possible that there exists X such that X is not concrete, and it's possible that X is concrete.
A mouthful.
It is a bit of a mouthful.
But it captures the essence of actualism in terms of concreteness.
Right. And in this framework, actuality itself can be redefined.
It can.
As being either concrete or necessarily non-concrete.
Okay.
And that's a exclamation point of, which is actuality of something is equivalent to it being concrete or necessarily not concrete.
So something abstract, like a mathematical truth, would count as actual because it's necessarily non-concrete.
Exactly.
So this reframing allows the core of the debate to continue without having to rely on that potentially problematic bimodal conception of being.
And now things get really interesting for the possibilist.
They do.
Because they've got a powerful tool up their sleeve.
What's that?
Possible world semantics.
Yes, possible worlds.
We hear about them all the time in philosophy.
We do. They're a very popular tool for thinking about possibility and necessity.
So how does thinking in terms of possible worlds help the possibilist?
Well, possible world semantics provides a really natural way for possibilists to articulate their views.
Okay.
It gives them a framework for understanding and evaluating claims about what's possible and what's necessary.
Right, so it's not just a way of talking.
No,
There's a whole logical system with rules and implications.
And these implications seem to favor the possibilist.
Okay, so tell me more about this system.
Well, in CQML, which stands for Quantified Modal Logic,
Okay.
we analyze modal language, talk about necessity and possibility, by considering a collection of different possible worlds.
Okay, so these are like alternative universes.
In a way,
Yeah.
you could think of each world as a complete and consistent way that reality could have been.
So like a parallel universe?
Sort of. But the key difference is that in CQML, there's one overarching domain of individuals
Okay.
that exists across all these worlds.
So everything that exists in any of these worlds is included.
Exactly. And that includes both the things that are real in our world
Right.
and all the merely possible things.
Okay.
And then for each world, we specify which of these individuals actually exists in that world and what properties they have.
Gotcha.
And we also designate one of these worlds as the actual world.
Which is our world.
Exactly the world we live in.
Okay, and then the words necessarily and possibly they're interpreted as applying to all or some of these possible worlds.
Exactly.
So it's necessary that if P is true in all possible worlds.
Right.
And it's possible that if Q is true in at least one possible world.
Exactly.
And this seems to be a very neat and intuitive way to understand modal claims.
It is. It's a very elegant framework.
And this leads to some logical truths within CQML.
It does.
That seem to be big wins for the possibilist.
Big wins indeed.
Like the Barkin formula.
The infamous Barkin formula.
What is that?
Well, it's BFF, which is diamond. There exists nu phi arrow. There exists nu diamond phi.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
It is. But what it means in plain language is if it's possible that there exists something with a certain property, then there exists something that possibly has that property.
Okay.
So think back to our Bergoglio example.
Okay.
If it's possible that there's a child of Bergoglio, then there exists a possible child of Bergoglio.
So this seems to say that just the possibility of something implies its being.
In a way, yes.
Even if it doesn't actually exist.
Right. The Barkin formula seems to say that mere possibility is enough to guarantee some kind of being.
And that's a direct challenge to the actualist.
It is a major challenge.
Because the actualist says there are no merely possible things.
Right.
But the Barkin formula seems to say that their own logic forces them to admit that there are.
It's a very powerful argument.
And CQML also validates the converse of the Barkin formula.
It does the converse Barkin formula.
Which is CBF.
Right.
There exists nu diamond phi, arrow diamond. There exists nu phi.
So if there's something that could have a certain property, then it's possible that there's something that has that property.
So the order of possibility and existence doesn't really matter in CQL.
Exactly. They're logically interchangeable in a sense.
Wow.
However, and this is a big however,
Okay.
the converse Barkin formula leads to a very strange consequence.
What is it?
Necessitism.
Necessitism.
The idea that everything that exists necessarily.
Oh, so there are no contingent beings.
According to necessitism, no.
So this microphone, we're all necessary beings.
If necessitism is true, yes.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is a very counterintuitive notion.
Because it seems like we could have easily not existed.
Right. Our existence seems contingent.
Yeah, like I could have not been born. This microphone could have not been manufactured.
It seems that way.
But CQML seems to be saying that if something exists in any possible world, and remember, the domain of individuals is the same across all worlds.
Right.
Then it exists in all possible worlds.
And therefore couldn't have failed to exist.
So even Bergoglio's possible children, if we accept them into the domain, they would be necessary beings.
According to CQML, yes.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
It is a very hard to accept.
So how does the possibilist who uses CQML reconcile this with our everyday experience of contingency?
They argue that our intuitive sense of contingency, what they might call contingency A exclamation point, is perfectly compatible with CQML.
Okay.
Contingency A exclamation point is the possibility of something being non-actual in some world.
Right.
Diamond, not A. Exclamation point X.
Okay, so that's like saying I might not be actual in some possible world.
Exactly.
But I still exist in the domain of individuals.
Right. You're still a part of the overall picture.
So for the possibilist who uses CQML, the underlying entity that's me exists necessarily.
Across all possible reality.
Even though in some of those realities, that entity might not have a body or might be doing something totally different.
Precisely, your essence exists necessarily.
But its specific instantiation might be different.
Exactly.
That's a really trippy idea.
It is a mind-bending concept.
So the actualist obviously objects to all of this.
Of course they do. They reject the whole idea of possibility from the get-go.
Right.
And for them, the intuitive notion of contingency is precisely contingency there exists.
Okay, so the possibility of not being at all.
Exactly.
If there exists, y equals x.
So I could have just not existed at all.
Right. That's the actualist's intuition.
And since CQML seems to rule that out, the actualist needs a different logical framework.
They do one that doesn't bake in the existence of merely possible things.
Right.
And allows for contingent existence.
And that brings us to crypty semantics.
KQML, yes, a major alternative to CQML.
How is it different?
Well, the key difference is that in crypty semantics, each possible world, W, has its own domain of individuals, D subscript W.
Okay.
And this domain can be different for each world.
So instead of one fixed set of individuals across all worlds.
Right.
In KQML, the set of things that exist depends on which world you're talking about.
Exactly. Each world has its own cast of characters, so to speak.
Okay, so when we talk about everything in a possible world, we're only talking about the things that actually exist in that specific world.
Exactly. We're restricting our attention to the inhabitants of that particular world.
And this seemingly small change makes a big difference.
It does a huge difference.
Because it allows KQML to avoid those problematic conclusions of CQML.
It does those conclusions that the actualist finds so objectionable.
Right.
So, for example, the Barkin formula BF, it's no longer valid in KQML.
Why not?
Because something that exists in a possible world might not exist in the actual world.
Right.
So the inference from possibly there exists an F to there exists something that is possibly F fails.
Okay, I see.
And similarly, necessitism N is also invalidated.
Because individuals can exist in some worlds, but not in others.
Exactly.
So you could have a possible world where I exist and another possible world where I don't.
Precisely.
And that means that I'm not a necessary being.
Right. Your existence is contingent.
So cryptkey semantics really shakes things up.
It does. It gives the actualist a logical system that fits their worldview much better.
Right. It allows for things to come into and go out of existence, and it doesn't automatically commit us to the existence of possibilia.
Right. Just because something's possible doesn't mean it actually exists somewhere.
And to make things even better for the actualist, they can modify the rules of quantification within KQML
They can.
to further strengthen their position.
Right.
So, for example, they can replace the standard axiom Q2 with a version from free logic called FQ2.
Free logic is designed to handle situations where we might be talking about things that don't actually exist.
Okay.
And FQ2 helps prevent the derivation of the Barkin formula.
So it's like they're patching up the holes.
Exactly. They're making their system airtight against those possibilist arguments.
So cryptkey semantics gives the actualist a solid logical foundation.
It does.
But what about the possible worlds themselves?
Right.
If they don't believe in possibilia, what are these possible worlds they're talking about?
Well, that's where theories like Hayseatism come in.
Hayseatism.
Yes, particularly as developed by Alvin Plantinga.
Okay, so how does Plantinga explain possible worlds?
Well, he says they're not alternative universes with non-actual entities. Instead, he defines them as maximal possible states of affairs.
Maximal possible states of affairs.
Yes, so think of them as very detailed descriptions of how reality could be.
So like a blueprint.
Sort of, but more comprehensive.
Okay.
Like a complete story of how things could have gone.
Okay, so not another place.
Right.
But a description of another way things could be.
Exactly.
And these descriptions are actual.
They are. They exist in our world.
Okay, so it's like these descriptions are like books.
In a way, yeah.
And these books are real.
Exactly.
But the stories they tell are just possibilities.
Precisely.
And Plantinga introduces this concept of individual essences.
He does.
Which are the properties that an object couldn't lack without ceasing to exist.
Right. So the essential properties of a thing.
And a hit CD of an object is a property that's essential to A and that no other object could possibly have.
So it's like a unique identifier
Right.
for each individual.
It's like the ultimate thisness of a thing.
Exactly what makes it that specific thing. And Plantinga uses these hack-CDs to give truth conditions for modal claims without having to invoke possibilia.
Okay, so how does he do that?
Well, take the statement, possibly Bergoglio has a child. This is true if there's a possible world.
Which is an actually existing abstract state of affairs.
Right.
Where Bergoglio's hack-CD is co-exemplified with the property being a child of Bergoglio.
Exactly.
So the possibility isn't grounded in the existence of a possible child.
Right.
But in the possibility of Bergoglio having that property.
In a certain abstractly described state of affairs.
So it's all about the individual and their properties.
Exactly.
And Plantinga uses KQML as his logical framework.
He does.
So he's firmly in the actualist camp.
Absolutely. He's trying to explain possibility without possibilia.
Very clever.
It is a very ingenious approach.
But not all actualists like hexitism.
No, they don't.
Some find the whole idea of hexes kind of mysterious.
Right, they're not entirely comfortable with these individual essences.
And there's another group of actualists who take an even stricter stance.
The strict actualists.
Right.
They're the hardliners of the actualist camp.
And what makes them so strict?
Well, they have a very particular view about singular propositions.
Okay, remind me what those are.
Singular propositions are propositions that are specifically about particular individuals.
Right, so like the proposition that Socrates is wise.
Exactly. That's a singular proposition about Socrates.
Okay.
And strict actualists say there can be no such thing as a singular proposition about something that doesn't exist.
Whoa.